The moment you need nothing from anyone, you become dangerous. Not because you're cruel, not because you're cold, but because you can't be controlled. Need is the chain that enslaves every human being. Need for approval, need for love, need for validation, need for security. And whoever controls what you need, controls you completely. Look around. Everyone is desperate. Desperate for attention, desperate for recognition, desperate for someone to tell them they matter. This desperation leaks from every pore, and everyone can smell it. And where there's desperation, there's manipulation, because need creates leverage, and leverage creates control. But there's another way to move through the world. Rare, powerful, terrifying to those who need you. Detachment. Not apathy, detachment. Not coldness, sovereignty. Not disconnection, freedom. When you're genuinely detached from outcomes, from people, from validation, from everything you once thought you needed, something shifts. The power dynamic inverts. Suddenly, you're not chasing, you're being chased. You're not begging, you're choosing. You're not controlled, you're free. This is why detachment makes you powerful. And once you understand the mechanism, you'll never surrender your power again. Most people will die without ever experiencing true detachment. They'll spend their entire lives attached to people who don't reciprocate, to outcomes they can't control, to identities that imprison them, to needs that make them exploitable. They'll be pulled in every direction by every attachment, like a puppet with 1,000 strings. And they'll call this being human. They'll call this caring. They'll call this love. But you're starting to see through it. You're starting to recognize that most of what you call attachment is actually bondage, and you're here because you want out. What you're about to learn is ancient wisdom dressed in modern psychology. The Stoics understood it. The Buddhists understood it. The most powerful leaders throughout history understood it. Detachment is not the absence of emotion. It's the presence of choice. It's the ability to care without needing, to love without clinging, to want without desperation. And when you master it, you become untouchable. This knowledge will cost you something. It will cost you the comfort of neediness, the security of dependence, the warmth of desperate connection, but it will give you everything else. Comment, need nothing, fear nothing, if you're ready to cut the strings.
Principle 1. The scarcity inversion. Human beings are wired to pursue scarcity and ignore abundance. We want what we can't have. We chase what moves away. We value what's rare. This isn't cultural, it's biological. Evolutionary psychology hardwired us to prioritize scarce resources because they determined survival. And this creates a brutal power dynamic. The person who needs less has more power. Think about dating. The person who's less invested, less needy, less attached, they control the relationship. Not through manipulation, but through simple supply and demand. Their attention is scarce, so it's valuable. Their approval is rare, so it's coveted. The same principle applies everywhere. In business, the negotiator who can walk away has all the leverage. In friendships, the person who doesn't need constant validation commands more respect. In employment, the worker who doesn't desperately need the job gets better treatment. Detachment creates artificial scarcity in your presence, your attention, your approval. And scarcity creates value. Watch how powerful people operate. They're never desperate. Not for the deal, not for the relationship, not for the outcome. They're interested, but not attached. Engaged, but not dependent. This detachment makes everyone want them more. Application. Audit your desperation. Where are you too available, too eager, too needy? Those are your power leaks. Start pulling back, not games, genuine detachment. Stop responding immediately to texts. Stop being always available. Stop chasing outcomes you're attached to. Build a life so full that no single person or outcome is critical to your happiness. When you have options, abundance, and internal stability, you naturally become less attached, and less attached means more valuable. In relationships, practice outcome independence. Go into interactions genuinely fine with however it goes. This isn't pretending not to care, it's actually not needing a specific outcome. Real-world example. In salary negotiations, the candidate who has other offers or genuinely doesn't need the job commands higher pay. Their detachment is their leverage. The warning: this can become manipulation if you're faking detachment while desperately attached underneath. People sense incongruence. True detachment must be genuine, or it backfires as obvious game playing. Also, excessive detachment in intimate relationships destroys them. There's a difference between healthy detachment and emotional unavailability. Know which you're practicing.
Principle 2. Emotional sovereignty. Attachment is outsourcing your emotional state to external circumstances. When you're attached, your happiness depends on things outside your control. Other people's behavior, outcomes, events. This makes you a leaf in the wind, blown wherever external forces push you. Detachment is bringing your emotional center back inside yourself. Your state becomes internal, not external, self-generated, not circumstance-dependent. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control. Epictetus taught that you control your thoughts, actions, and responses. Everything else is outside your control. Attachment to external things is attaching to what you can't control, guaranteed suffering. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, practiced this daily. He faced war, plague, betrayal, and loss. His journals show he felt it all, but he remained emotionally sovereign by detaching from outcomes he couldn't control. Modern psychology confirms this. Locus of control research shows that people with internal locus who believe they control their emotional state are more resilient, successful, and mentally healthy than those with external locus. When you're emotionally sovereign, you can't be emotionally manipulated. Someone withdraws affection, you're fine. Someone threatens, you're calm. Someone tries to guilt you, doesn't land. Not because you don't feel, but because your emotional state doesn't depend on their behavior. Application. Identify where your emotional state is externally dependent. I'll be happy when I get the promotion. I need them to love me to feel valuable. If this deal falls through, I'm ruined. These are emotional hostages. You've given external circumstances the power to determine your internal state. Start practicing internal generation of emotion. Be happy now, regardless of circumstances. Feel valuable now, regardless of others' opinions. Be stable now, regardless of outcomes. This isn't toxic positivity, it's choosing your state consciously rather than letting circumstances choose it for you. Meditation helps, journaling helps, Stoic philosophy helps, anything that strengthens the muscle of choosing your response rather than being controlled by stimulus. Real-world use? When someone's trying to make you feel guilty, afraid, or desperate, your emotional sovereignty makes you immune. They're pulling levers that aren't connected to anything. You remain unchanged. The warning: emotional sovereignty can become emotional suppression. You're not trying to not feel, you're trying to not be controlled by feelings. Feel everything, but let nothing control you. Also, some situations legitimately should affect your emotional state. If you're emotionally neutral about your child being hurt, that's not sovereignty, that's pathology. Calibrate.
Principle 3. The death ground principle. Sun Tzu wrote about death ground, a military position with no retreat. Soldiers fight harder when they have no escape because desperation creates intensity. But there's an inverse principle that creates power. Living as if you're already dead. Already lost everything. Already at the end. This is memento mori. Remember, you will die. When you truly internalize your mortality, trivial attachments dissolve. The job you're attached to? Meaningless in 100 years. The relationship you're clinging to? Gone after death. The money you're chasing? You can't take it. Death is the ultimate detachment, and contemplating death creates detachment in life. Stoics practiced this daily. Marcus Aurelius: you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Not morbid, liberating. When you live with death awareness, you stop attaching to the impermanent. You see everything as borrowed time. This creates a paradox. You appreciate things more while needing them less. Modern psychology calls this mortality salience. Studies show that contemplating death makes people more authentic, less materialistic, and more focused on what actually matters. Application. Practice memento mori. Every morning, remember you will die, not to be depressed, but to be free. Ask yourself, if I died tomorrow, would I regret being attached to this? The job that's stressing you? The argument you're having? The approval you're seeking?
Death perspective reveals their insignificance. This doesn't mean nothing matters. It means most of what you're attached to doesn't matter. And when you detach from what doesn't matter, you can fully engage with what does. Live like you have nothing to lose, because you don't. Death will take it all anyway. This isn't nihilism, it's freedom. Real example. Steve Jobs famously said that remembering he'd be dead soon was the most important tool for making big decisions. It eliminated fear of loss because loss was already inevitable. The warning. Death awareness can become nihilistic depression if you conclude nothing matters. The correct conclusion is most of what you're attached to doesn't matter. So detach from that and attach to what does. Meaning, love, creation, service. Also, don't use death awareness to avoid responsibility. We all die anyway, so why try? That's not detachment. That's resignation.
Principle 4. Anti-fragile attachment. Nassim Taleb introduced the concept of anti-fragility, things that gain from disorder. Fragile things break under stress. Robust things resist. Anti-fragile things grow stronger. Most attachment is fragile. When challenged, it breaks. You're attached to someone's approval, they withdraw it, you crumble. But there's anti-fragile detachment. You're connected to outcomes but not dependent on them. When things go wrong, you adapt and strengthen. The difference? Fragile attachment says, I need this specific outcome. Anti-fragile detachment says, I prefer this outcome, but I'll benefit regardless of what happens. Think about investors. Bad investors are fragilely attached to specific stocks. When they drop, the investor panics and sells at a loss. Good investors are anti-fragilely detached. They have a thesis, but they're not emotionally dependent on it. If wrong, they learn and adapt. Or relationships. Fragile attachment. If they leave me, I'm destroyed. Anti-fragile detachment. I deeply value this relationship, but if it ends, I'll grow from it and be fine. The psychological mechanism? Anti-fragile detachment comes from abundance mindset and growth mindset combined. You believe there are many possible positive outcomes, abundance, and that challenges make you stronger, growth. Application: reframe losses as learning, not toxic positivity, genuine curiosity about what you gain from setbacks. Got rejected? You gained information about fit and resilience practice. Lost the job? You gained freedom to find something better and learned what not to do. Relationship ended? You gained self-knowledge and availability for something more aligned. This isn't pretending loss doesn't hurt. It's finding the genuine benefit within it so you're not fragilely dependent on avoiding loss. Build multiple areas of life satisfaction. If you have career, relationships, health, hobbies, purpose, and community all developed, losing one doesn't destroy you. You're anti-fragile because you have redundancy. Real-world example? Entrepreneurs who have failed multiple times often become more successful than those who have only succeeded. Why? Because they've developed anti-fragile detachment through repeated loss. They know they can rebuild, so they're not desperately attached to any single venture. The warning? Anti-fragility can become recklessness. I'll be fine if I lose everything, so why protect anything? That's not detachment, it's irresponsibility. The balance? Care deeply. Prepare thoroughly, but detach from needing specific outcomes. Fight hard for what you want while being genuinely okay if you don't get it.
Principle 5. The identity prison. Most people are attached to who they think they are, and that attachment is their prison. You think you're the smart one. Now you can't admit ignorance. You think you're the successful one. Now you can't risk failure. You think you're the good person. Now you can't acknowledge your darkness. Identity attachment creates rigidity, and rigidity creates fragility. You become so invested in maintaining an image that you can't adapt, grow, or be authentic. Buddhist philosophy calls this attachment to self. The ego creates a false solid identity, then suffers trying to maintain it. The enlightened state is recognizing the self is fluid, not fixed. Modern psychology calls it identity foreclosure. People who rigidly attach to an identity stop developing. They defend the identity rather than pursuing growth. Watch people who are too attached to their identity.
the aging athlete who can't let go of past glory, the academic who can't admit being wrong, the rich person whose entire worth is their wealth, the attractive person terrified of aging. Their power is gone because they're enslaved to maintaining an image. True power comes from identity detachment. You're not any single label. You're fluid, adaptive, free to change, grow, contradict yourself, be different tomorrow. Application. Identify your core identity attachments. What labels do you cling to? I'm a blank. I'm the blank. I'm blank. Now consciously loosen them. You're not those things. You're a person who sometimes does or embodies those things. The difference is freedom. Practice acting against your identity occasionally. If you're the responsible one, be spontaneous. If you're the funny one, be serious. If you're the tough one, be vulnerable. This isn't being fake, it's being fully human. You contain multitudes. Attachment to a single identity is attachment to a fraction of yourself. Stop defending your past self. People change. You're allowed to grow beyond who you were. The person who needs you to stay the same forever is someone invested in controlling you through identity attachment. Real example, David Bowie constantly reinvented himself. Ziggy Stardust, Thin White Duke, multiple personas. He was powerful because he was attached to none of them. He could kill one identity and birth another at will. The warning, identity detachment can become identity confusion. You need some stable sense of self, core values, principles, character. Detach from rigid labels, but keep your ethical foundation. Also, don't use identity fluidity to avoid accountability. That wasn't the real me after doing something harmful is manipulation, not detachment.
So principle 6, strategic indifference. Caring about everything is caring about nothing. When everything matters, nothing matters. Most people spray their emotional energy in all directions. They care about their neighbor's opinion, their colleague's comment, the stranger's judgment, the internet's reaction. They're emotionally invested in 10,000 things they can't control. This diffusion of care is why they are powerless. Their energy is scattered, so they can't concentrate it anywhere effectively. Detachment through strategic indifference means choosing very few things to care about deeply and becoming indifferent to everything else. Machiavelli understood this. The prince can't care about being universally loved. He must care about stability and security, even if it means being hated. Strategic indifference to popularity enables effective leadership. Stoics practice this as preferred indifference. Health, wealth, reputation. They preferred having them but were indifferent to whether they did. Only virtue mattered absolutely. Everything else was strategically indifferent. When you're indifferent to most things, your care for the few things you've chosen becomes powerful, concentrated rather than scattered. Application. List everything you currently care about. Be honest, all the things that occupy mental space and emotional energy. Now ruthlessly cut. Choose 3 to 5 areas maximum that deserve your deep care. Everything else becomes strategically indifferent. Career? Deeply care. Random person's opinion of you? Indifferent. Your family? Deeply care. Social media metrics? Indifferent. Your health? Deeply care. Latest political outrage? Indifferent. This isn't apathy. You can be aware of things without being emotionally invested in them. The news happens whether you're stressed about it or not. Others judge you whether you care or not. Free your emotional energy from the 1,000 tiny attachments that drain it. Concentrate it on what actually matters to you. Real-world example. Warren Buffett is strategically indifferent to daily stock price fluctuations. He cares about long-term value. This detachment from short-term noise is why he's successful. The warning, strategic indifference can become sociopathy if you're indifferent to ethical basics like not harming others. You're not trying to care about nothing. You're trying to care about the right things. Also, some people will accuse you of not caring about things they think you should care about. Good. Their opinion of your priorities is something to be strategically indifferent about.
Principle 7, the outcome paradox. The harder you chase an outcome, the more it eludes you. The less you need it, the easier it comes. This is the outcome paradox. Desperation repels success. Detachment attracts it. Why? Because desperation broadcasts neediness, and neediness is status suicide in every domain.
Desperate salespeople don't close deals. Desperate daters don't attract partners. Desperate employees don't get promotions. Detachment broadcasts abundance, and abundance is magnetic. The person who doesn't need the deal gets the deal. The person who doesn't need the relationship gets the relationship. This isn't a trick or a game, it's psychological reality. When you're detached from outcomes, you show up differently, more confident, more authentic, less try-hard, less manipulative. Think about job interviews. The candidate who desperately needs the job interviews poorly, nervous, trying too hard, clearly needy. The candidate with other options interviews well, relaxed, authentic, genuinely curious if it's a mutual fit. Which one gets hired? Or sales. The salesperson who needs the commission chases too hard. Customers feel the desperation and resist. The salesperson who's detached from whether they buy presents information and lets customers decide. Which one makes more sales? The mechanism. Outcome attachment creates emotional investment that clouds judgment, distorts behavior, and broadcasts low value. Outcome detachment creates clarity, authenticity, and high-value signaling. Application. Before any high-stakes situation, consciously detach from the outcome. Tell yourself, I prefer X outcome, but I'm genuinely fine either way. Mean it. Visualize yourself handling both success and failure well. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation that removes desperate attachment. In the situation, focus on process, not outcome. Control what you can control, your preparation, your behavior, your effort. Detach from what you can't, their decision, the result, the circumstances. Practice approaching everything as an experiment. Let's see what happens, rather than this must work. Experimental mindset creates natural detachment. Real example. Many successful people got their breakthrough after they stopped desperately chasing it. They relaxed, detached, pursued it more authentically, and it came to them. The warning. This isn't law of attraction magical thinking. Detachment doesn't make the universe give you what you want. It makes you more effective and attractive in pursuing what you want. You still have to do the work. Detachment without action is just apathy.
Principle 8. The sovereign self. The final form of detachment is becoming a sovereign nation of one. Most people are colonies, occupied territory. Everyone has a claim on them, family obligations, social expectations, cultural programming, peer pressure. They're not free, they're owned. Detachment is declaring independence, not from relationships, but from the need for others' approval, validation, or permission to exist as you are. This is psychological sovereignty. Your thoughts are yours, your choices are yours, your life is yours. Others can have opinions, but they don't have authority. Nietzsche wrote about the overman, the person who creates their own values rather than inheriting societies. This is sovereignty through detachment from collective programming. Existentialists called it radical freedom, the terrifying realization that you're completely responsible for your existence. No one's coming to save you. No one's permission is required. You're sovereign. Most people never claim this sovereignty because it's lonely. Being your own nation means standing alone sometimes, making unpopular decisions, facing criticism, being misunderstood. But it's the only way to be truly powerful, because as long as you need external validation, you're controlled by whoever provides it. Application. Start making decisions based on your values, not others' expectations. Stop asking permission to live your life your way. Someone disapproves of your choices, acknowledge it and proceed anyway. You're sovereign. Their disapproval is their business. Build financial sovereignty, income that doesn't depend on a single source. Build emotional sovereignty, happiness that doesn't depend on others. Build intellectual sovereignty, thoughts based on your reasoning, not programmed beliefs. The most important practice? Stop defending your choices to people who don't live your consequences. You don't owe anyone justification for your life. Real-world example? Every great innovator, artist, or leader had to claim sovereignty. They had to detach from what everyone else thought they should do and follow their own vision. That sovereignty is what made them great. The warning? Sovereignty can become arrogance. I don't need anyone can become I'm better than everyone. True sovereignty is humble. You don't need to prove it because you embody it. Also, sovereignty doesn't mean isolation. You can be sovereign and still have deep relationships. The difference is you choose connection. You don't need it to feel whole.
Detachment is not cold. It's the warmest thing you can do for yourself.
Because when you're no longer enslaved by need, you can finally choose freely. Choose to love without clinging. Choose to pursue without desperation. Choose to connect without losing yourself. Most people never experience this freedom. They live their entire lives pulled by attachments they never questioned, chasing validation they'll never fully receive, needing outcomes they can't control. And they call this normal. They call this being human. But you've seen through it now. You've recognized that attachment is bondage disguised as connection, that need is weakness disguised as care, that desperation is suffering disguised as passion. Detachment is the answer, not as escape, but as mastery, not as apathy, but as freedom. When you need nothing from anyone, you become dangerous, not because you're cruel, but because you're free. And free people can't be controlled. The chains others use to manipulate, approval, validation, security, love, they don't work on you anymore. Not because you don't value those things, but because you don't need them from any specific source. You've become self-sufficient, emotionally sovereign, psychologically independent. This makes people uncomfortable. They're used to controlling others through need. When they can't find your need, they don't know what to do with you. Some will call you cold, some will call you detached, some will call you dangerous. They're right about one thing. You are dangerous. To their manipulation, to their control, to their expectation that you remain desperate and exploitable like everyone else. But the price of this power is loneliness, real loneliness, the kind that comes from standing alone while everyone else clings to each other for validation. Is it worth it? Only you can answer that. But consider this. The loneliness of sovereignty is chosen. The loneliness of desperation is imposed. One is freedom. The other is prison. Choose wisely. Because once you taste true detachment, you'll never willingly chain yourself again. Need nothing, fear nothing, control nothing, and watch how everything comes to you. Not because you chased it, but because you became someone nothing can chase away.